Hi, and welcome back to Military Law Talks. So today's video is on updated guidance for reinstatement of service members who left the service either voluntarily or involuntarily due to the COVID-19 vax mandate. And so I've done previous videos on this before, which I will link down below. But just know that this updated guidance is, it does supersede that previous guidance. And so if you are a service member who's seeking reinstatement, you'll want to take a look at this guidance very closely in order to make sure that you have exercised all your rights and followed the right process to get reinstated. So let's take a look at this guidance. Okay, so this is the updated guidance on the correction of military records for service members who were involuntarily or voluntarily left due to the COVID-19 vaccine requirements. So it's dated April 1st, 2025. This is updated guidance, so it replaces the previous guidance that I did a previous video on. So this is the latest and greatest guidance. And so it applies to reinstatement of all military members pursuant to Trump's executive order offering reinstatement of those service members and corrections of military records. And so there's a process, it's two different processes for whether you were involuntarily separated or voluntarily separated, or just, ETS didn't reenlist or resign your commission based on the vaccine mandate rather than being vaccinated. And so if they were involuntarily separated, then the military departments will actually affirmatively go out there proactively. They're required to, one, figure out what service members this applies to, and then proactively contact those service members and let them know that they have the ability to have their records corrected and to be reinstated back into the military. And then those who were voluntarily left, so left on their own volition, they will not be contacted by the military, but they just need to respond if they want to come back in. And so the DoD is going to continue to broadly communicate via social media or websites or other forms of media to include their ability, to put out in the public that service members have this ability to come back. And if they want to come back, they actually have to sign a written statement saying that they left due to the vaccine mandate. And so this guidance provides more information on how that process is. And so let's take a look at that. So this is guidance for reinstatement. And so it talks about this public outreach program that they are supposed to implement, that there should be a screening process to identify which service members involuntarily separated solely, and solely is kind of an important term that this will discuss, solely based on their refusal to comply. And so they need to figure out who these service members are and then affirmatively reach out to them. There should be an eligibility assessment for those service members to determine, was it solely due to the vaccine or what the vaccine mandate, or were there other reasons for their separation? And then there's a process they should implement a process to facilitate, quote, expedite and fairly consider these eligible reinstatement cases in front of the Board for Military and Naval Records Correction. They should coordinate with different agencies to include DFAS, Defense Health Agency, Department of Veterans Affairs, to determine how they are going to estimate the benefits upon reinstatement. So service members are going to be, if they were involuntarily separated, they are going to be formally reached out to and let them know that they have the ability to come back in the military, and they're going to be given an estimation of their benefits. And I'll explain later in the video how that number has come up. And so they are going to have then 90 days to decide, do they want to take the deal and come back in exchange for a 4-year service commitment, or 2 years if they only had like 2 years left on their contract. But at a minimum, it's 2 years, but they're really looking for a 4-year commitment. And so they're gonna have 90 days to make that decision once they have that estimated number, that dollar amount for benefits. And then is that worth it to them to come back for a 4-year service commitment? So it provides more information about like this solely refusal for to comply. And essentially, if there's any question, then kind of tie goes to the service member. And so if there's any doubt, the service member should be included. And so the service secretary, so each, Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, they're going to contact their respective service members. And so the outreach consists of a mailed letter. And there's an example of that mailed letter in email, if you can find their email address, and a follow-up phone call by some uniformed individual making the offer to reinstate these individuals. And the written offer includes this information, an invitation to seek reinstatement, an explanation of the process, an explanation of the potential financial benefits, to include an explanation of those offsets. And there is finally a clear guidance on what those offsets are. In my previous video, we did not have any details on that, but I did think that it would probably include any salary that you earned at an outside job, any VA benefits, etc. And that is the case. And so we'll go over in detail later in this video what those offsets are. An advisement that they need to do a 4-year service commitment, and then any contact information for those if they do want to reapply. And so then it just talks about the eligibility of pre-screening, etc. I'm not going to read it. I'm just going to go over some highlights. So this memo is directing that these cases should have priority, and they really should be approved, and disapproval is reserved to the service secretary. So the Sec Army, Sec Air Force, Sec Navy are the only ones who are allowed to disapprove reinstatement of those solely discharged for refusal. All right, and then just some more information. And like I said, once they get that, service members get an estimate of their compensation package, they will have 60 days to respond. So in exchange for that 4-year service commitment. All right. And then service members who do not seek reinstatement will not have their records corrected. So this is an important thing to note. So if you are a service member who you have bad paper for refusing the vaccine, you either have to elect to go back in for a 4-year service commitment to get your records corrected, or you have to, on your own volition, apply to have your records corrected. And so you either have to do it on your own, or the military will affirmatively and do it for you if you elect to come back in. And then it provides information about voluntary separations. Same thing. So just to reiterate, if you are voluntarily left, you can be restored to your same rank and pay. However, there is no back pay, no credit for lost service, or any other similar relief, unlike those who were involuntarily separated. And those who voluntarily left can also, on their own, notwithstanding this policy, apply for correction to their records. So if there's anything bad in your records before you left service, you can ask for it to be corrected. All right, I'm going to go over the attachments. And so this is more guidance for that correction. And so one thing that I would just want to note is the language in these memos. So the highlighted portion, it says the requirements that the service members receive a, quote, non-critical and unnecessary COVID-19 vaccine without adequate due process mechanism for vaccine accommodation was an injustice. So note that they did not use the word illegal, that they never in these documents, never in the EO, never in any of these implementing documents do they ever refer to the vaccine mandate as illegal. Now, that's an important distinction because that is currently being litigated in a case that just got somewhat revived. I mean, the government asked for it to be dismissed as moot because the vaccine mandate was rescinded, and the Fifth Circuit just recently reversed and remanded a case on this very issue. Was the order illegal or not? And so that's currently being litigated, and I'm going to go over that case in further detail in another video. But I just wanted to point out not the EO, not any of these documents never refer to that order as an illegal order. And I would happen to guess that all the service members who left either voluntarily or involuntarily would argue that it was an illegal order, and that is why they refused to comply. Also, most of these service members applied for a religious accommodation or a medical accommodation, and those were summarily denied. Some of them were approved, but it was very, very rare. Essentially, it was kind of like a blanket denial. And even it came out in litigation that the Navy had a template for denial, and there was no corresponding template for approval. That it was essentially commanders did not have discretion to approve religious accommodations, which is contrary to the law. Really, religious accommodations are generally approved unless the government has a compelling government interest, and it's done in the least restrictive means. That's the strict scrutiny that the courts will apply. And so it's pretty rare that religious accommodations aren't able to be accommodated, and particularly for the COVID-19 vaccine, because, after the vaccine wasn't even effective anyways, and so it was kind of pointless. All right. And so again, it's talking about this service commitment, right? So, and also service members who do not apply to be reinstated, that it talks about this guidance will not be extended to service members who don't apply within that 1 year time frame. So if you want your records corrected, now is the time to apply, because they're not going to expedite those corrections a year from now. And so you have now until, 2026, April 1st, 2026 to apply. So apply now. All right. So this is the letter that's going to be mailed out to service members for reinstatement. And again, I just wanted to point to the language. It says that it's wrongful. It doesn't say that it's illegal. It just says wrongful. I deeply regret that you were forced to choose between compliance and ending your military career. I think for most people, they would say it was a lot more than just compliance. That this unfair, overbroad, and completely unnecessary COVID vaccine requirement, that is quoting directly from the executive order that President Trump signed, allowing reinstatement of these service members. And so I just wanted to point out the language from that. But what I really wanted to get into is these financial benefits of reinstatement. So again, these are only for involuntarily separated, and it's got to be solely due to the vaccine mandate. And so it allows, you would get all your back pay. So your basic pay, your BAS, if you are eligible, your BAH, your COLA, if applicable, any bonus payments that were recouped as part of the separation. So if you had to repay back a bonus or any bonus that you would have earned during that reinstatement period, those would all be in this plus column, and then we would minus some required offsets. And so these are the offsets that I was talking about in my earlier video that we didn't have for clear details on, but I surmise that it would likely include, and sure enough it does, wages included from any job. So potentially we could have some service members in a situation where they earned more money out of the military than they would have been in the military. So there's actually no financial benefit. They won't get any financial benefit from being reinstated. Well, obviously they'll come back on active duty, and but they won't get any financial incentive to come back for those 4 years because maybe they earned more money, right? Working in a job or maybe their own business. And then, but it also includes this offset, also includes any VA benefits. So if you got any a VA rating, we're getting compensation during that time, that would offset it. Any separation payments, any lump sum leave payments. So if they bought out your leave, you're going to have to, that'll be an offset and your leave is going to be restored. Any SGLI or insurance payments or TSP contributions that the government made on your behalf, or any debts that you still owe, those would be offsetted from this potential pay. And so, like I said, some service members may not see a benefit because of these offsets. And then your benefit is still subject to taxes. And so you could get a lump sum or quarterly installments, depending on which you prefer, but you'll still pay, and that'll be deducted. Your taxes will be deducted before you even see that money. And then just as required documentation. So if you are electing to come back into service, the documentation is recommended that you have this available and ready, so it'll be quicker for them to get you your estimated benefits package. And so that time period will start sooner, and then you can come back on active duty earlier, or, active reserve status. And so it'd be prudent to gather all this information so you could provide it to the service, whichever service branch you are a part of. And so your W-2s, tax returns, pay stubs, spouses' W-2s if you file jointly, just to offset to determine how much your pay was as a portion of your tax return, your DD-214 separation orders, any bonus contracts, and then obviously bank information for that. And then any life-changing events, they want those information too. Did you get married? Did you get divorced? Did you have a child? Did any of your children turn 21, etc.? Did they go to college? Are they in college? And then there's a QR code for more information. And then there's medical benefits that can be reimbursed. So same thing, it makes sense to gather these documents beforehand to help expedite this process. And so this is what you can get reimbursed for. So any insurance premiums that you paid, out-of-pocket expenses, any self-pay that you did, and then minus any offsets. So any offsets that you would have, that the military potentially you would have paid, right? Either premiums or catastrophic cap. And so that would offset what you would be reimbursed for. And so again, just some required documentation. And if you are electing this program, it would be important for you to gather this information to help make it quicker. And then there's a way that you can submit this information. Okay. And so then this is just more guidance about the correction of the records. And so again, I'm going to link this document to this video, and so you can get more information about how to apply for this program. So, and then if you are a service member, or if you know a service member who is impacted and may be eligible for this program to be reinstated, make sure you share this video, give them this information, provide this information to them. If you got any value out of this video, please like this video. I am a new channel, so please consider subscribing. If you've watched multiple videos of mine and you haven't subscribed, please subscribe and share my videos out there. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you in the next video.